What's up, everyone? I just wanted to make a quick video going over some of the misconceptions and facts surrounding the King James Version. Don't get me wrong, the King James Version is a very good literal translation of the Bible, but there are a few things surrounding it that some people just simply don't know about, and I thought it would be good to educate you guys on. So first off, a lot of people think that the King James Version Bible is the first Bible translated from the original Greek into English. This is not the case. Actually, a lot of the King James Version is based off the Bishop's Bible and a few others, like the Geneva Bible and such. So it is not the first English translation from the Greek manuscripts. Also, the King James Version has a few unique readings in it, such as you may hear in the Revelation, the Book of Life instead of the Tree of Life. And the reason this being because one of the main translators, Erasmus, actually, when he was trying to translate the Greek, he was actually missing some pages at the end of Revelation. So he went to the Latin to try to translate the last little bit of Revelation, and he translated what he thought was there from the Greek. And since the word book and tree are very similar in Latin, and I believe also in Spanish, it became the Book of Life instead of the Tree of Life. Now, this is not some kind of crazy doctrine changing thing. Overall, I mean, if you lose Book of Life, Tree of Life, I mean, doesn't sound good, does it? But anyway, that's definitely something to point out and know about the translation. And just to be clear, the Tree of Life is the correct translation from the Greek, the original writings. The King James Version preserves the error of Erasmus. And like I said, this is not doctrine breaking or anything like that. It's just a minor flaw in the translation of the King James Version of the Bible. But that's nothing, again, this is nothing to really worry about. It's just that if you see these two different translations, you should know that the correct translation is the Tree of Life, not Book of Life. So one of the biggest misconceptions surrounding the King James Version is actually the idea that people think that the King James comes from the Textus Receptus, or the received text. This is actually not true. In fact, this is actually the other way around. The Textus Receptus is actually based off the King James and a lot of other collaborations of other Greek manuscripts. A lot of people try to go out there and advocate that, oh, the King James Version is the only Bible you should be reading because it's the only one that comes from the received text. No, that's not historically accurate. In fact, it's the other way around, like I just mentioned. I think this is why you probably see so many people out there advocating for only the King James. But that's not true, and it's actually, I think, personally, it's a little dishonest. And I'm not trying to bash anyone out there. If you like the King James, like I said, it's a good translation. But to say that it's the only translation people should be reading, it's just not true, because there are actually translations out there that are a little bit more accurate to the actual Greek manuscripts that we have today. Another thing to keep in mind, and this does not in any way hurt the King James, in some ways it actually probably enhances it for some people, because the King James was written to be more kind of epic. They wanted it to sound really beautiful. It really like grab at your heartstrings, I guess you could say, like this literary kind of sense. It doesn't hurt this at all. I mean, it's a very, very beautiful way to read it, especially if you're familiar with Old English. But this is just something to keep in mind as well. Speaking of Old English, there's about over 300 words in the King James Version that no longer mean what they mean today. And like the word closet doesn't mean what it means today. And there's a lot of words as well that some English words we just don't simply use at all today in modern English. I mean, and you probably, like again, unless you know Old English, you probably won't know what some of these words mean. You probably just have to break out a dictionary just to get the accurate translation. Again, this is nothing wrong with it. It's just, again, something you need to be aware of when you're reading the King James Version, because it is written in the context of Old English. These are just a few facts about the King James Version that I just want to go over in a really quick video just to sum them up real quick. Like I said, the King James is a great translation. You just need to be aware that it's not the end-all be-all of Bibles. There are other great Bibles out there, and it's always good to have more than one source. I have a few Bibles up there. I have a couple digitally as well. It's always good to have more than one source. Don't be scared away from other translations just because people tell you, oh, this is the sole and only King James translation is the only one that you can read. It's a little dishonest. And I'm not hating on those people. I just think that, again, if you actually look at the facts and the research behind the scholars, you'll see that that's not entirely true. And in fact, there are some translations that are arguably a little bit better, such as the New American Standard Bible, which is one of my favorites. There is the ESV. And there are a few smaller translations as well out there a lot of people don't know about that you should definitely go check out. Also, keep in mind that the King James version, it's only about 400 years old. The church survived the first 1600 years without it. That's not the hate in the King James. It's just a fact that we made it without it, for the first 1600 years. It's a great translation. It's done a lot of great things for great people. But it is not the end-all be-all of translations. Also, real quick, if you're reading the New King James Version, it uses the exact same manuscripts. It doesn't change any of its sources. It's literally just an updated English version of the King James Version Bible. It's still a great translation. It's a word-for-word translation, by the way. It means it's a very literal translation. Very good. Nothing wrong with it. Like I just pointed out, there are a few things about it that you should know that are, again, probably not quite as accurate as some other translations like the NASB or the ESV may be. But these are just a few facts surrounding the King James. I highly recommend you go out and do your own research. There's a lot of details out there surrounding the scriptures, which is very good because we need to educate ourselves as much as possible. I strongly encourage you to go out and do your own research. Do as much as you possibly can if that's something you really want to do. I know I do a lot of research, and sometimes it's hard to remember it all. But anyway, guys, that's it. I just want to let you guys know and encourage you, and hopefully you'll feel inspired to do more research.